Hey, good morning, and let us begin our lesson on the teachings of Jesus in advanced course. This week number 9. So we have just one more week to go, and we were on the lesson 3 of title is the Jesus as the master teacher. And we'll continue on that subject for today. This is where we left off last week, and we'll continue from there. Jesus as a teacher. He's a master teacher, meaning he's the teacher of all teachers. Probably the master teacher, the best teacher. He is. And by looking at Jesus as the best teacher, how he taught, and whom he taught, where he taught, and so on, we learn from Jesus, and we try to become a good teacher. We will not be the best teacher like Jesus is. At least we can be a good teacher. If you're a Christian, and if you're a leader in any of your local churches, then you are required or asked to teach. And as you teach, you're not teaching like secular teachers in school, but you teach according to the ways and the contents where Jesus was teaching and is teaching. The reason I say Jesus is teaching, because he is teaching us today, even though he is not visible. Bible says through the Holy Spirit, Jesus teaches us and continue to do so, because that was the promise that Jesus made when he was ascending or going up into heaven. He said, I'll be with you until the end of the earth, or end of the days, meaning until he comes back, until the history is over. This earthly human existence ends, and we enter into a different stage of existence. Jesus is going to be with us. That means he's going to be the teacher for our lifetime. So we learn from him, and then we teach. Now, Jesus as a teacher is a teacher when he or she has students. Okay, if you don't have students, you cannot teach. So Jesus, of course, had many students. And as we looked at last week, he did have diverse students. Priests and scribes are probably the top class, or a top class of people. And then Samaritan woman, and then Roman soldiers who are considered Gentiles, meaning usually Jews, especially those honorable Jewish men who do not associate with or have any, conversation with Samaritan woman or Roman soldiers, because they are Gentiles. And then Roman soldiers are considered enemies to Jews, because they are forcefully military occupants of Israel. So, but Jesus did not hesitate to teach them, meaning Jesus included everyone as his students. He did not distinguish his students. Then also, of course, he taught general public, meaning these general public, common people, did not have any education at all. They are not able to read or write. But yet, Jesus was able to teach them, not only teach them, but he taught them very effectively and very good. I mean, he was a good teacher to them. So they were able to understand what Jesus was teaching, and he used a different method when he was speaking to common people. But when he was teaching to these priests and scribes, he did use high language. So he could change the language itself depending on who the students are. So diverse student means to Jesus as the master teacher is that he taught in very different ways, different means, and different method. So Jesus used diverse teachings to diverse students. So understanding that as a fundamental principle of Jesus as the master teacher, we as a good teacher, we should be able to, or at least we try to change our method, language of communication according to who our students are. So continuing on this subject of diverse students, Galilean countrymen. These are also common people. And Galileans are basically, they're not educated, and then they are poor. So he did not hesitate to teach, or he did not exclude these poor people from his education or his teachings. So Galilean countrymen usually considered nobody, even though they are Jews. Jesus did not reject them or exclude them, but he included and welcomed these Galilean countrymen who are poor and nobody as his students. In fact, majority of his 12 disciples that we know of from the gospel are indeed these Galilean countrymen. Those people who lived around the Sea of Galilee or Galilean Lake. And they're basically fishermen and farmers. So it is not ordinary. It is not common or a common sense to have these Galilean fishermen and farmers as his disciples. Because if you're a teacher and if you have some credit as a teacher, that you want to have excellent students. So, you will be credited for teaching them. But Jesus did not make that kind of choice. Jesus instead, he chose just common people or less than common people to be his disciples, and he educated them and trained them to show that indeed he is the Son of God and he is the master teacher. And then also it is a lesson for us that anyone can become a good student of Jesus Christ, a mature and good Christian, regardless of your background, your gender, your age, your ability, and your education. All these things do not matter as long as your heart is focused on Jesus Christ as the teacher. As long as you respect him, and if you have the desire to learn from him, then he will be able to work with you and help you to become the good student or good teacher. Also, he taught on some of his students were synagogue officers. In today's term, these people would be the workers in a church or the mosque or the temple. These are religious officers whose job and whose primary focus responsibility is religious. And Jesus taught them about the spiritual issues because, I mean, to teach those spiritual leaders of the day, you have to be better than them, right? So when we see the evidence that Jesus taught in the synagogue, and also these synagogue officers who are one of those religious leaders and who are spiritual authorities to come to Jesus and ask questions of the spiritual matters and of the life and death, then it means Jesus was respected as and considered as the teacher better than themselves. So unless you consider someone is better than you, you do not ask for help, or you do not ask for the lessons. So it is the evidence that Jesus was considered by even those spiritual leaders or religious leaders as better teacher than themselves. The sick and lame, most common people, and those who have certain prestige, meaning who has riches, who has fame, and who has a position, those who are so-called, those leaders, leaders of society, they do not usually associate with the sick or lame or those who have deformation, meaning who are weak and who has issues and problems. But Jesus did not hesitate. And he even welcomed these sick people, lame people, those who has physical challenges, mental challenges, those who are considered disabled in today's term. Jesus did not exclude them. Usually, the common thought for any teachers of today would think those who has disability and issues like a sickness and the mental issues and physical disabilities, they are considered second class or third class, even as a student. So teachers will not give much attention to them. So the society today, we have this so-called special education for these people, these students who has challenges or disabilities. That's how we today address those problems and issues. But think of 2,000 years ago in the land of Judea and the land of Israel, where there is no social security or social concerns, then they were left without any proper help. They're only surviving because of there's a law in Jewish culture, the law of the Moses, teaching them to help out those who are disabled and those who are sick and those who are widows and orphans, because they do not have any social security like today, the systematic, but it was depending on the individual help and the service giving. But I mean, they were rarely, barely make their living, so they have food on their mouth least. But other than that, they didn't have no opportunity for education or anything of social interaction at the time of Jesus. If you're lame, they were considered cursed, because either that person or their parents would have done something bad or sin. That's why they become, disabled. That thought is still prevailing today in some cultures. Even in Korea, I mean, they don't say it, public, but in the most majority of the mind in Korean people, still, if something bad happens and if a child is born with these problems and issues, then they think parents or parents, someone ancestors may have done something wrong, so they are born with these problems, whether it's mental issues, whether it's physical issues, so it is just common thought in many cultures, and there's no difference in the culture of Israel or Jewish culture. So that was common, and Jesus did not accept that common idea, and he rejected that and included all those who are disabled and challenged to be his students. Of course, he had chosen the disciples, those who would become the leaders of the first church. So that's the intentional and the intended. He picked up or selected these students to be his disciples, not the disciples who come to him, but Jesus made that decision. You can be disciple of, you are included in the 12 or you're not. So that was Jesus' intention. So by that, the making disciples, if you are a teacher, a Christian teacher and Christian leader or a spiritual leader, then you would make that decision to choose who's going to be your disciple and who is not. And that is a job of any pastor, it's an important role of responsibility of any pastor in a church. And I do make these decisions, and it takes a prayer and it takes a lot of experience, and it takes the discernment to choose who you take as disciples, and you learn from Jesus what are the principles, what are the guidelines to choose a proper, a good disciple. And Jesus did that, and he did show us by choosing that, showing how to choose them. We'll go into more detailed, evidences of these Jesus choosing these students, or Jesus teaching this variety, diverse students. In Mark 11, chapter 11, the chief priests and the scribes heard this and began seeking how to destroy him, for they were afraid of him, for the whole crowd was astonished at his teaching. So whether they were willing to learn or not, they were present. Priests and scribes, they were present among the population. The general public there. So with these common people, they were in there, but they did not want to learn. But whether they wanted to learn or not, they had to listen to the teachings of Jesus. So his teachings, you cannot block from hearing as long as you're there. So they were included as his students. The crowd, general public, common people, whatever you call them, they're the main audience, or majority of the students are common people, just farmers, fishermen, women, and children, who were considered nobody at the time of Jesus. If you know, these women and children were not, boys, until they reached the 12, they were considered, they were not considered as a human being. They were considered as a human being, but they were not counted as included in the population count. When in Jewish culture, Jewish society, when they were doing this census, meaning the counting the number of people where your nation has, when they were doing census, women and children were not counted. Today we do, but at the time of Jesus, they were not, and they were included as Jesus's very valuable students. So it says, when Jesus had finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. So we see from the Matthew chapter 7, Matthew's report, that Jesus, yes, he taught these common people, the crowds, many, many times. Samaritans. The reason we look at Samaritan and then woman is it's a double jeopardy, sort of, because basically Jews would not associate with the Samaritans, who are the mixed blood between the Gentile woman and Jewish man. When they are born between Jewish, out of the Gentile woman, then they were not considered as Jew. So these people were not accepted into Jewish society. Then they have to live in a certain area that is designated for them to live. Just like they excluded lepers, those who have leprosy, from their society, same thing happened to this Samaritan who are mixed between Jew and Gentile. So that's one obstacle. The second obstacle was the woman. Any honorable man in a Jewish culture would not have a conversation one-to-one, isolated conversation with a woman, because that would be leaving a big question. Usually when that happens, these women are prostitutes. So unless you are taking risk to be considered having a relationship with a prostitute, honorable Jewish man would never talk or have a conversation one-to-one in isolated place with a woman. So these are double obstacles that Jesus crossed to teach that indeed he is the Messiah. So when he is, sharing the gospel, the good news, he as the master teacher, he crossed this ethnic obstacle, then gender obstacle, or cultural, socio-cultural obstacles. So Jesus was willing to cross any socio-cultural, ethnic obstacles to deliver his message that he is indeed the Messiah himself. So that's sometimes what we have to take risk as a Christian teacher. You may face the situation where you need to cross these barriers. Sometimes it could be language barriers like we have today in this class. The English is not my first language. That's barrier one. Then you students, most of the first language is not English. So we do have a language barrier between us, and we need to cross that. So it could be more than that. And so crossing the barrier is a must. It's something that we need to overcome as a teacher, because Jesus did that. Romans again. This is in Matthew 8. Then Jesus said to the centurion is a captain, or the head, the military leader who has 100 soldiers under him. So he has 100 soldiers to control and to take responsibility and to take care of. And then he comes to Jesus and asks for help. And Jesus says, "Go, let it be done just as you believe it would." And his servant was healed at that moment. So he must be a good captain, because he's not coming to ask for help, not even for his soldiers, but this is a servant, not even a soldier. Maybe he's a Gentile from some other countries, not a Jew. So this captain has a sympathy and empathy, and he basically has love. And Jesus was willing to help because he looked into the heart of this centurion, the Roman soldier, Roman captain. And even though he did not believe in Jesus yet, when he came to ask for help to Jesus, that was the belief. So based on that belief and faith, Jesus was willing to give help to this centurion, and then the servant was healed. So Romans were included as his students. Galileans, of course, we'll just jump on this. Then the 12 disciples. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" So these 12 disciples, including Iscariot, Judah, who later on betrayed Jesus, he taught them, knowing that Judas eventually will betray him. So it is very difficult for, if you're a teacher, consider yourself in Jesus' position. Then knowing one of the students will stab you on your back, then you still, knowing that, you are willing to teach that person. It's a very difficult thing to do, but Jesus did. And Jesus did not kick out Judas. So we want to remember, us as a teacher, you may not have the students that you like, or there are students that do not like you. Still, you are to teach them, and eagerly and equally. You do not discriminate a certain student against other, or you do not favor a particular student to the other. Regarding the favor, Jesus had favored 3 disciples to the others. The reason for his favoritism is because of the level of the leadership, not because he had a certain, tendency to like this person to the other, but as basically it's for the reason of ministry. And that is okay in a church. You have to select certain person in comparison to the other, even within the church, for the reason of ministry and reason of the order of the church. So that is okay. But you don't give a favor to satisfy your own ego or your own greed or your own agenda or need. If that is the case, we call that favoritism. Favoritism, whether you're parenting, whether you're teaching, is not acceptable according to the Bible, and especially the teaching of Jesus. Jesus respected every single person and their spirit, because he considered every single one of these people were created in the image of God. Thus, they are very valuable. They are should be respectable to them, and they have equal value as a person. That's a very biblical foundation, and that's the foundation of democracy today. So when we are talking about democracy, it means, I mean, usually the people thinking in political terms, but to have that political implication of democracy, the whole nation and the government and people should have the very agreed idea that every person, regardless of their age, gender, education, whatever, they are to be considered as a perfect human being, having the same right and the same responsibility. Or the equal, should say equal rather than same. Equal right and equal responsibility. That's how we begin our democracy. If the government or anyone who is in power does something that is against this very fundamental philosophy or ideal of democracy, then that is no longer a democracy. Even though they have the name democratic something something of whatever, actually it is not. Of course, even America, in reality, it is not perfect democracy. But the difference is America or many of those so-called democratic nations are trying their best to pursue or realize that ideal that everyone is equal, regardless of. So, but some governments say that in front and do like a propaganda about being democratic, but in reality they have no desire, no intention to pursue that idea or that philosophy. If that's the case, then we cannot call that nation or the government democratic. Again, coming back to this, the 12 disciples, he did select the 12 out of all these common people. And then Jesus selected 3 to be the leaders of the other 12, who are the Peter, John, and James, if I'm correct. So those are the 3 better disciples. So there is a certain favoritism. I mean, in a church order, within the church order. Okay, that's it. This is just evidence, so I'll read from the John. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew that he had been lying there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed?" Of course he does. Of course he does. Jesus did not ask it because, he did not know, but Jesus is asking to bring the conversation, to make that connection. And Jesus did heal that man on that day. So the sick, when he saw them, when he's there, he did not disregard because he is sick. Of course, and in terms of the work and ministry and the function, he may not have any value. But Jesus did not consider that to be the consideration or the factor when he decided to either teach or do not teach, either heal or do not heal, or share the gospel or not. I mean, that was no concern for Jesus at all. Because the world, I have many things to speak and to judge concerning you, but he who sent me is true, and the things which I heard from him, meaning God the Father, these I speak to the world. So basically, Jesus was teacher of the world. He was the teacher of everyone. Whether you listen, whether you learn or not, that didn't matter. Jesus was sent to teach the whole world, whole generation, whole human population, regardless of their religion, their gender, their age, their preference, their education, their color of skins. These things did not matter to Jesus. He did wanted to teach every single one of us. So the world, basically including everyone who were born into this earthly existence, are considered, are eligible to be his students because Jesus is the master teacher. Jesus is the master teacher. Now, the classrooms. Today, us students in this class have all these fancy tools to learn. The laptop, and then big screen, and then projectors, and even recording, and then the chairs, and the very nice classroom with air conditioner. These things Jesus did not have at all. I mean, this environment and then equipment does help us to learn better. But say, if you don't have them, can we still learn? Yes, of course. And Jesus taught them because he's the master teacher. Regardless of the condition of the classroom, he chose to teach everywhere, wherever the condition was. So we'll look into the examples of the classrooms that he chose to teach in a home, of course. Home is a good place to have a good teaching and education. Even though the space may be very small. I mean, think of the time of Jesus. The single house would be very small. It's not big. And Jesus was willing to teach there, and as it is recorded in the Gospel of Luke. Let me read. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. So it is evident. Jesus entered a small house with the two women inside it, who happened to be sisters, and he was willing to teach them. only 2 students in a very small house. And then he spent the time with them and taught the gospel. So that shows several things here. Not only he went to choose a home as a classroom, but 2 women as a student, and then he spent quite a long time with them to teach them the gospel and the kingdom of God. As very personal individual tutoring, I mean, in today's term, the tutoring would cost a lot more than the this kind of classroom, education, because we have many students pay, less money, and then the school and the teacher is able to provide the learning. But if you're to have tutoring, you're going to pay probably twice or much more. If I tutor, today, if I tutor English to a student, it would cost to you probably between $30-$50 an hour. That's a lot of, money to pay for tutoring, and that's like normal average cost. And then Jesus was doing it for free. He didn't charge them denarian or talents to learn from him. It was a free lesson, probably, not probably. According to the gospel, they paid and served the meal to Jesus. And Martha was very busy preparing the meal for Jesus, and while Mary was sitting and listening. So that's kind of picture that we see. Any rate, speaking about a classroom, Jesus had chosen a home many times, not just this case, but in many other cases, he went into a home and taught his lessons. And he was more than willing to do that. At his hometown, he came to his hometown and began teaching them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers? Is not this the carpenter's son?" Because they all know who Joseph, the carpenter, is. And then what they are saying is, when the father is a carpenter, and then the son automatically becomes a carpenter. I mean, that's how it is in the time of Jesus in Israel. And what they are saying is they are not, he's not educated beyond, the learning of Torah. Learning of Torah is a mandatory for any male child, and then you need to learn the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament Bible. So they know that Jesus is, as any other boy in the town, probably learned the Torah, but beyond that, he did not have any higher education like imams or the rabbi of the time. And then he had this wisdom and especially the power. So they were asking this big question: where did it? What happened to this boy that I know? And okay, let's continue this after 10 minutes break. Hey, let us continue our second part of week number 9, the lesson on the teachings of Jesus, advanced course. Again, there was a saying that the prophets were not welcomed in his hometown. And of course, it was the case for Jesus as well, because they all knew. As it is written there in verse 55, they were asking, is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers, James and Joseph, and Simon and Judas? So by the record, we know at least he had 4 brothers plus some sisters, which do not have the name on here. And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did this man get all these things? And because they knew the family and they're with them, still that with them, and then he is teaching in his hometown, which most prophets would not do, because they will not be welcomed or they will not give the credit. But Jesus took that risk and went into the hometown and did taught them. So he, in a sort of way, he takes a risk. And in spite of this risk and expected unwelcome, he was willing to teach them, because the gospel is that important. And he did not discriminate anyone for the reason of, these, socio-cultural reasons. Then he chose to teach at the temple, not just once, many different times. As far as we read from the gospel, there are several record of different times that Jesus went to the temple. The temple, if you do not know, is the location where the mosque is placed in Jerusalem today. That the golden dome mosque is placed on the site of the temple of God, or Jewish temple. Now, that temple, that location, not the same temple, but the location, Jesus went in, which that temple was destroyed in AD 70, I believe, by the Romans. But until then, it was standing, and it was a center of Jewish belief, and it's the religious symbol of God's presence, the presence of Yahweh among them, among the Jews. And the things happening in every day. Of course, they came to worship on the day of Sabbath, but even in other days, there are offerings and all the religious activities continue to happen in the temple. Just like in those in Asian cultures, the Buddhist temple is always busy. It's not like a church on Sunday. The Christian churches or Catholic churches on Sunday, it's busy, but on other days, it's not so busy. There's nothing happening except just 1 or 2 days in the weekdays. But in the temple, just like a Buddhist temple today in many Asian countries, it's always busy with the people, because people come to give offerings and to to have prayers, and the same thing happened there. And Jesus was he was more than willing to come to visit the temple and teach there, because there's always a people who are gathered for the reason of spiritual matters or religious matters, if you prefer. So these people are religious people, whether it's as for the formality or whether it's a genuine, and regardless of their true motive, they come to visit the temple. For some people, it is a once a lifetime experience to come to the temple, just as today's Muslims come to visit the Mecca, it was the same thing. So they come to visit the temple once in their life, and they travel from afar, as far as the India and other countries, because there were Jewish diaspora elsewhere in the world, and that they come to visit the temple at least once in their lifetime. So that was probably one of the best place for Jesus to teach the gospel, because they were coming with their religious belief of Yahweh God. Just as much as a Muslim today come to the mosque to worship the Allah. So that's the same kind of context and mentality. And Jesus was there teaching as a rabbi. And then they would listen to him, because any religious person who are genuine worshiping God would listen to any rabbi who's giving the explanation of the Testament or the Torah. So they were willing to listen, they give their attention, and the temple is one of the best classroom that Jesus taught, as much as a synagogue, the local the place of worship. So synagogue and the temple was probably the most favorite classroom for Jesus. So Jesus came there, and this again, their response is just same as their hometown. How has this man become learned, having never been educated? Because I mean, already this news about Jesus, rumors about Jesus were spreading so fast among the Israelites. Not only the Galileans knew who Jesus was and heard about Jesus, but in Jerusalem, it was a big story of the day. Just like we have a big story of the day, the breaking news. And this was continuing story, building up for 3 years, and they were talking about Jesus of Nazareth. So when you say Jesus of Nazareth, they already knew he's not so much his carpenter's son. He didn't have any higher education. He also himself is a carpenter. How a carpenter can have this knowledge and wisdom? Remarkable, amazing, astonished would be the word for him. So Jesus answered them and said, my teaching is not mine, but His who sent me, referring to the Yahweh God. If anyone is willing to do his will, meaning will of God, he will know of the teaching, whether it is of God or whether I speak from myself. So he was asking his students, the listeners, to decide whether this is a truth or not. When you hear the truth, I mean, it doesn't take any, the master level or college level education to understand the truth. Even a child, 4 years old, will understand what the truth is. That's how the characteristic of the truth and the wisdom, anyone can understand. You don't need any, mathematics or physics or psychology to understand that. So Jesus is challenging the students. You make the decision. You make that validation. You make that determination on your own. When as you listen, and just tell me whether this is from God or from just a unlearned carpenter. And he chose a temple where everyone come to worship, and all kinds of people are coming to be his classroom. Well, synagogue and the temple, we can understand. I mean, even the home, home is a good place to have a good, teaching and education. But a boat, fisherman's boat, to choose that to be a classroom or platform to teach, is unusual. So this is not normal. This is not common. This is unlikely to be a place to teach this spiritual religious matter, which is pretty much sophisticated, sometimes complex, and sometimes deep. And the record in Luke says, and he got into one of the boats. There are many of those fishermen's boats, which was Simon's, another later who's called Peter, and asked him to put out a little away from the land or shore, and according to some other translation. And he sat down and began teaching the people from the boat. So imagine all these people, probably 1,000 of them, gathering to listen and learn from Jesus, because his name was already known to among the common people. And these common people, usually the children and woman who has nothing to do in other than just being sit there, because I mean the industry and the economy at the time of Jesus was like this. The woman and children had no place to work because the economy was pretty bad. I mean, when there's a farming flourishing, fishing flourishing, the other industry, trade, and then housing flourishing, if that happens, there's always job demand. And even the woman and children would work. But if it's not the time of harvest, they did not have work to do. So only they were asked to come and work if that's the period of harvest or the planting the seed. So in between, and especially in the winter, there's no job for them, but have plenty of time. So what they do, they come to listen to Jesus because they have nothing to do other than coming and listening to good story and the teaching of Jesus. So they were gathering on shore, thousands of them, onto the hillside, and there's a shore and the boat. And Jesus asked the boat to go a little further into the water so everyone can see him and listen to him. So, considering these as quiet, they can focus, and actually it's a pretty romantic sight to have a good spiritual discussion. So he chose this lakeside from a boat to teach these students, the common people who came to listen to Jesus. And he loved to do that. At a well, we looked at the Samaritan woman, and she was located, we're coming to draw water from Jacob's well, and that was a place that Jesus chose to teach this Samaritan woman. And Jacob's well was there, and so Jesus, wearied as he was with his journey, sat down beside the well. It was about the 6th hour, which is a midday, the noon. So noontime, the sun is up there, pretty hot. He walked all the way from probably Capernaum to this Samaritan Jacob's well, which is probably one of the shortcut to the city of Jerusalem. So he chose that route, and then he come to the Jacob's well, and the opportunity to teach comes, and he was more than willing to teach this Samaritan woman, the gospel. So he chose that another unlikely place to be his classroom. Basically, he would teach elsewhere at any time. By a pool. This pool is known for healing, and it is located at the what is called the Sheep Gate, which is still standing. It's still there in Jerusalem. If you go to Jerusalem, there's these several different gates that is located on the wall of Jerusalem. And now there is in Jerusalem, by the Sheep Gate, a pool, in Hebrew called Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. And here we know that he healed healed the blind and healed the men who are brought on the bed and so on, or who's paralyzed. So Jesus took that moment and the place by a pool where the sick and those who want to be healed are staying. And think of them, the condition. These people who are sick and they don't have money, and then they just look for the chance to the pool to have the movement, which happens rarely and unpredictable, and living there to take that chance and to be healed. And Jesus was sympathizing with them, and Jesus saw them, and he did not pass them. He taught them. By doing the healing, the reason that he did heal these people, in fact, Jesus did not heal everyone who is sick in the whole world. He wouldn't do that. He could have done it because he's God himself, but he did not choose to do that. He only healed those he come into contact with, or who come to ask for someone who cannot come to visit to be healed. those are like a limited. And then also he healed the acquaintance who he knew, like Peter's mother, the mother-in-law, and also the Martha's brother, or Martha and Mary's brother. So acquaintance, then who came into contact with them, and then when he was asked, these are the only people he healed. The reason that he performed this miracle of healing for those who are not cannot be cured by human means was to show that he himself is the Messiah, which is the message that he tried to communicate with everyone that he encounters. So his main message is that he is the Messiah. The reason that he wanted to communicate or show, identify himself as the Messiah is because the Messiah is the one who saves people from their death, save these people from their sin. So that is the reason, and then that's the gospel, that's the message that Jesus brought to these people. And he used every occasion and every place as his teaching time and teaching classroom to communicate, and he did not hinder himself by any of the environment or condition that is given. So he's teaching, or he as a master teacher, he did not prefer a certain place of time to teach his message. Whenever it's available, when there is a chance, he was more than willing to teach them and used all the places and occasions. Oh, he even performed a miracle at wedding. That's the first miracle that is recorded in the Bible, in the gospel. By the timeline, we know that this Cana, the town of Cana in Galilee, it's one of those towns around the Sea of Galilee. And then mother of Jesus asked Jesus to, and saying, we ran out of wine. And she didn't say, you got to do something or change water to wine. She did not give any of these instructions, only simply said, we ran out of wine. And Jesus, tell the mother, it's not my time yet. I can't do anything. But once he said that, he still decided to perform the miracle. And by doing so, turning water into the wine, not just a regular wine, but into best wine, he indeed proved himself to be the prophet, and then indeed himself to be the one who possessed this miracle power. If you perform the miracle power, there are only two possibilities, right? Either it is from God, or either is from the evil, the Satan. So that's the only interpretation they are able to think of in the Jewish culture. Even today, it's probably the same. It is coming from the good source or coming from the evil power. So this miracle power or paranormal power is, if it is from God, and if Jesus is saying that he is the Son of God, And he didn't say directly, but indirectly, by performing these miracles, he is teaching the people that think of me and my teachings, my sayings, and indeed ask yourself the question whether I am the Messiah or not. So that would be the way asking the question by performing this miracle and healing. So wedding, it choose to be a good place, good classroom to teach the gospel. Excuse me. Midst of storm. This is very unusual. I mean, when you are just in the middle of the danger, middle of crisis, like a midst of storm. As he was crossing the lake of Galilee, which is called Sea of Galilee. I mean, it's that big. If it's visible from the satellite, it's big, right? And this Sea of Galilee is visible from the satellite. So it's a pretty big. I believe it's 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers long. So it's a good size. And he was crossing that, and then when there's a body of water, the weather changes suddenly from time to time. So there are a couple occasions where Jesus and his disciples faced a storm or just wind and the rain. Wind and rain is not that, it doesn't happen that often, but does happen in the land of Galilee, and that happened to Jesus and his disciples. And considering the boat, I mean, it's not like today's big, huge yacht or the boat that we see in the movies, but these are the wooden small boat, probably big enough to, hold 15 people at maximum. That would be pretty small boat, fishing boat. And then the disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" And he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" No faith in Jesus. And then, in the middle of storm, he is calm and he calms the water. So two things. Jesus, he will not be endangered until his mission is completed. So that's one of the message that Jesus is trying to deliver or teach to his disciples. Second one, he shows he has the power to control the nature if he wants to. He doesn't do. Probably this will be the only occasion, or there's another probably occasion, but that's not something that happens every day, but once when he is willing to, he could do that. Meaning that he has the power and ability beyond human, either from God or either from Satan. And then you need to make that decision, whether is it from the Satan or whether it's from the God or Yahweh. And Jesus is asking that question again by performing the miracle, taming or controlling the nature, even the nature, wind and wave. So midst of storm, that again becomes an occasion, opportunity, and it becomes the classroom. And Jesus teaches his lesson to his disciples. And for us who read the story, and it is a lesson for us. So by choosing the middle of the lake, in the middle of the storm to be the classroom, he not only teaches his disciples, he also teaches us today. So the same message. Do you believe? Do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God or God himself, who has the power and ability to control the creation? Because he created the lake, the wind, and the wave. So if you created them, if you're the creator, then you will be able to control that, right? So that ought to be the question he is asking, and now he's asking, do you still have no faith? So not only he addressed that question to his disciples, he is asking the same question to us who are reading the message. That's why the reason that we need to read the gospel regardless. I mean, for us Christians, of course, it is good for the Christian to read the gospel and remind ourselves of who Jesus is. But for those who are non-believers, who are not Christians, by reading these stories, by asking the question or being asked the questions by the Jesus, and then you have the opportunity to answer that. And now we talked about the place of his teaching. Now we are looking into the time of his teaching. For us, today's students, there is a certain time that you need to come to the class on certain day. So for us, it's a Tuesday, 10 to 12. It's going to be the my classroom time for the subject of the teachings of Jesus. So you come at the given time and sit there and listen. So it's decided, already announced, and it's planned. But in the case of Jesus, they were no like a classroom hours. And we'll look into how he chose when to teach. These are the lists, some of the lists, not all of them, some of the list of his class hours or the class times. By night, night class. Now today, of course, we have night classes for those who are working daytime, and it's not so unusual. But in the Jesus day, to have a class and to teach someone at night, that's not common. That's not common. So it's unlikely, and it's not common. By midday, noon, under the sun, that's uncommon. Again, you don't want to sit in the just hot sun, middle of the day, in the climate of the Middle East, and the arid or semi-arid climate, you're going to be burned. You're going to be burned. I mean, it's just like a summer, Californian summer. I mean, even in winter, the noon at the outdoor is pretty much bad. But Jesus chose to teach regardless of heat and condition. Midst of feast, in the middle of festival, he chose to teach. And in the middle, the day of Sabbath, he was not reluctant. He was not reluctant to teach. So he was willing to teach on the day of Sabbath, which is the Pharisees considered to be unlawful, breaking the law. In the morning, like early morning, he chose to teach. So these are all unlikely time to have class on the gospel or the kingdom of God. So his topic usually is about the kingdom of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ, telling people that indeed he is the Son and that he is the Messiah. So these are the main subject that Jesus taught in any time and any given location. So look into the case by night. This is what happened to Nicodemus. Nicodemus came to visit Jesus by night, because that's probably the time that he could hide his face and come in like a more secretly and not visible to others, avoiding the public exposure. And he decided to come at night and ask this very important question for himself and for his eternity. He came to ask that. I mean, it is worth to take these risks if anything has to do with your eternity, the life after that. So he decide to take that risk. And if someone is willing to take that kind of risk, I mean, if it's discovered coming to visit Jesus one-on-one secretly, then probably he will be considered to lose his position as a member of Sanhedrin, and so that's a big risk. And they come by night. So this man, his name is Nicodemus, came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you have come from God as a teacher, not the teacher, as a teacher, not as a Messiah, not even as a prophet. So he's kind of considering this Jesus of Nazareth to be a teacher, might be a good teacher, but not a prophet or not the Son of God yet. Not yet. But he came anyway because he on the unconscious level or even conscious level, even though he did not want to say it out loud in front of Jesus. That's probably why he intended to call him a rabbi, a teacher. And he said, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. The way he addresses this question or the statement, and the question in form of a statement, it didn't say with you, but with him. That's a kind of rhetoric he distanced himself with Jesus, even though he come to visit, and he have this very big question. And if you're coming to ask some question as a learner, then you're putting yourself under the teacher. But his self-esteem or did not allow him to recognize or acknowledge that he is coming as a student. He doesn't want to be he is, of course, he is a rabbi himself, and he is a member of Sanhedrin, which is the top 30 plus religious leaders of the time, the top 30 of the whole nation of Israel. So he, of course, he is one of those prestigious people. Yet, he has to come to ask a question. And then still, he didn't want to lose his self-esteem and that position as a member of Sanhedrin. That's why he say with him, referring the one he speaks to him as someone distant. I mean, us who are in Asian culture will understand this way of speaking, because we don't do that anymore. But in us in a little ancient culture, if you go like about 100 years go back, and then this kind of speech or the dialogue way of dialogue is common. It's pretty common. And saving your face, sort of to say. So this guy wanted to save his face and come by night and address Jesus as a teacher, a rabbi, and address as him instead of you. Yet he come to learn, and Jesus read that heart and mind and the very genuine interest. It did not come to test Jesus like some other Pharisees did, but he did have this genuine interest and motive to come to see Jesus. And Jesus accepted that heart and then gave answer to him. So night is no issue for Jesus. You can come as long as your question and your motive is genuine, and you just look into that desire of heart. By midday, again, this happened with the Samaritan woman, and it's about the 6th hour, which is the middle of the day, because zero hour for Jewish culture, it starts in the 6 a.m. in today's standard. So 6 hour from 6 a.m., which is the 6th hour, would be the noon, the 12th. So that's how we know it's the middle of the day. When people have festival or feast, I mean, 4th of July, think of in American context, or the lunar New Year, or the the August 15th in lunar calendar, which most of in Asian culture celebrate as a fall feast. Those days are the day that we drink, eat, and enjoy, and have happy, time for pleasure and fun. And Jesus chose, it sounds awkward, but he chose to teach people, and it happened in the temple. So temple, the feast. The reason that could happen is because different from our celebration of feast in Asian culture, and particularly in the Jewish society and culture, those feasts are associated always with Yahweh God. It does have a religious implication or a religious important days of their religion. So that's why Jesus was able to make those time as a teachable moment, or the opportunity to learn from the student position. So these teachable moments doesn't come on a certain given time and hour that is set up like ours today in the modern education, but it can come anytime and any place. And Jesus did not hesitate to take that opportunity to teach and to tell them the very message of the gospel. So it's not like unusual if you know why Jesus chose those location and those time to teach the message of gospel. Oh, this sort of be very unusual, and in terms of a Jewish tradition and culture. The Sabbath is the day that you take a rest. Meaning, in Jewish culture, you are not supposed to work, or you're not supposed to walk for certain mileage. It's like within about a mile distance. So on Sabbath day, you are not allowed to travel or work or do the business. You cannot do that. So that's sort of the day, but Jesus worked. I mean, according to their interpretation of Pharisees. Pharisees interpreted that Jesus' teaching or healing was working, and it's against the rule of Sabbath. And that Jesus broke that tradition. And Jesus was willing to break the tradition or wrong interpretation, wrong religious connotation of the law, as long as he is able to communicate the message of the gospel. Okay, thank you for your attention and listening, and let us take